Big love, peace, honor, respect. Salutations. Om Namah Shivaya. Do you please excuse me? In the background, I had a YouTube tab open and it got cranky and it said, "Hello, Frankie. It's time for you to get a little bit of an audio spanky. Hey, we're going to play a little pranky. Hey, don't you be getting it all cranky." So, namaste. I am Franklin. Patrick when I'm working. The BushWhisperer when I'm whispering about bushes. Hope you guys are all well. Hope you guys are all swell. Hope you guys are all thriving as you keep arriving and you get your mind engine on so that you can get a little bit of mental driving. We're going to be deep diving and I think it's going to be a continuation of previous conversations. Yo, big love, namaste. We got Howard and we've got Gaz in the house. Hope you guys are smiling. I see my hair looks a little bit unfair. Looks like I've been in a wind tunnel or something. But yeah, so this is a topic that's pretty close to my heart. I think it's close to a lot of people's butts because they talk about it. When they talk about these topics, it's very close to their butts. So we could say it's close to a lot of people's butts, close to some people's hearts. A lot of people express it through their mouths with chunky bits of bad-smelling nuggets that belong in the flush machine. And the reason I say this is because there is just so much bullshit out there. Excuse my French, but I'm going to call it what it is, in print, right? And it's the same old. It's the same old nonsense. Let me take a sip of my dark cocoa. Oh, it's so damn good. It's just, okay, so the milk is raw milk that I made. This time I didn't use just cashew nuts. I used a bit of cashew nuts and cashew nut and conkers. You know, conkers, the nuts, the big ones. You break them open, two in your hand, clink. Some of the conker nuts and just raw, you know, soak it, wash it, soak it, blend it again. Make sure you got to have a good blender. So it's just raw. You don't have to filter it when you're using the cashew nuts and the nuts from the conker because they're both very soft. A little bit of soaking and they turn very, very soft and they blend into a creamy paste which becomes a beautiful creamy milk. Nothing gets thrown away. There's no need to filter. Well, there's no need to filter. Did you cut your hand when was the last time? Did I cut my hand where? You mean there? My hair? No. It's called a kudumbi. You see, this is how this unfolds. See, this goes on and 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 on. There we go. It's still all there. It's called a kudumbi, and it's for comfort's sake. It's for comfort's sake. Elliot, big love. Namaste. I didn't cut my hair. What does happen is my hair trims itself. This is called the new and improved BushWhisperer self-trimming hairdo. This is a self-maintaining, self-trimming hair, right? Once you understand how cool it is. I look like Father Time. You mean Grandfather Time, because I got myself some gray beard now. Santa Claus. I'll take Santa Claus. But yeah, Father, Grandfather. I like adding the word grand in front of father. It makes me feel important. Grandfather Time. No, jokes aside, it's a self-trimming hairdo because when I sit down, it breaks. It gets stuck in car doors. It gets stuck indoors. It used to be down by my knees at the back, and then it breaks. So it just keeps breaking at like past my butt sort of level. And I just allow it to break because I'm not attached. I'm just like, let nature do with my hair what nature wants to do with my hair. That's my attitude. So yeah, let's dive into the topic. We've also got Darlene. Namaste. Welcome, dear Darlene, as well. I hope you are good. Howard, you can almost taste that cocoa. Oh, yeah, man. It is pretty damn good. The secret is I make it really strong and there's no sugar. I don't even put raw honey or anything in it. I don't even have raw honey in the house. I haven't been buying raw honey for like about a couple of months. I probably should buy some. I'm just trying to like reduce the sugar footprint of all sugars because you get enough sugars from vegetables and fruits really. So yeah, just have it bitter. Once you get used to the bitter flavor of cocoa, it's you can't drink cocoa in a restaurant again. You just can't. It's like, you gotta put sugar in it. Ugh. Even my boy, my 9-year-old boy, if you put sugar in his cocoa, he's liable to swear at you. And I'm like, dude, you're 9 years old. You don't use that language. He says, he put effing sugar in my cocoa. That's what he would probably say. I'd have to reprimand him and confiscate his tablet. Whoops, too late. I've already confiscated his tablet. I'd have to confiscate his laptop as well. Maybe his 9mm. I'd have to confiscate his 9mm from him. He's got a 9mm. It only shoots blanks, and he doesn't get given blanks. It's a replica gun, but it looks pretty damn real. So yeah, so where are we? We're looking at the Esoteric Enneagram, the Kabbalah, the misconceptions related to the occult science, and a couple of things I want to brush against. The Mazloth, the zodiac of the Kabbalah, the Adam Kadmon, this notion, this idea. Is it myth or history? The sephiroth, the meanings related, their relation to the hands mapped on the fingers and the toes, misconceptions of the four worlds, and related PSYOPs and related commentary. So I'm looking forward to breaking this down. Literally breaking it down. I have a problem with a lot of what's written in books. I have had for quite a while. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you shouldn't read the books. What I'm saying is you shouldn't believe what you read. Don't take it as the gospel. It's good to read the books so you know what the PSYOP is, because you learn from the books. In the way that if you're sparring with someone who makes stupid mistakes, you can learn from their stupid mistakes and go, gosh, I keep nailing this guy every time he does that. I must remind myself never to do that, right? Like that. You can learn from books in that fashion. So probably a good place to start, I think, is let's start with the Mazloth. Let's start with the triads. Actually, before that, we should probably start with the four worlds of the Kabbalah. Yeah, I think that's the pucker place to start. Gosh, I had another tab open when I clicked on it. So let me get you the PSYOP, what they say, and then let me decode and give you some insights. And we should also look at the tree of life itself. I think it's probably a good thing. And the tree of life itself is something fundamental to understand, right? So I think before we start with the four worlds, let's start with the tree of life. Sorry to be so disjointed, but this is real time. I don't have a plan per se. It's just something that's on my mind that's been bugging me that I want to talk about. And because of my vast experience in this field, I don't have to plan my lectures. They can be organic, and I can feel the crowd and feel what's the right thing to start with, because such is the privilege of experience, and I've put in the time. So that gives me a certain an affinity. So here we go. So here is the proverbial tree of life. We're calling it the tree of life because it's the tree of life. It's the life tree, and it's full of lifelike things. There we go, the tree of life. So when we look at the tree of life here, we can see the tree of life represents the 10 sephiroth. One of the big misconceptions, which is something that you'll see in the Yetzirah, Sefer Yetzirah, we're going to start with the Kabbalah. Then we're going to link it up to the Enneagram. We're going to use the Saturns Square, and we're going to also look at the temperaments, as the temperaments reflect the four worlds. And you will, as we go through this, it will all start to make sense. So you'll just have to bear with me. We'll have to start at the beginning in order to work our way back to the points that I wish to make. So we've got the tree of life. Now, this representation of the tree of life is totally arbitrary, and it has become popularized, I believe, because of a PSYOP. Part of the whole knowledge of the Kabbalah, why are we hanging out in Malkut right now? Yeah. Yes, thank you, Howard. That's a like drop your hat kind of question. Let's drop the bomb. Gonna drop the bomb. Mommy, do you think they'll drop the bomb? Yeah. So that's basically Howard on the ball. Balls. My girlfriend says balls to the wall. That's Howard on the ball. And so here we have the tree of life. Malkut, as Howard's pointing out, is the sephiroth, the final sephiroth. Now, this representation is incorrect. I want to point that out again. It's very specific within the Kabbalistic lore that one should not be making the tree of life mundane. This is mundane. One should not be creating clear outlines of the tree of life in such a fashion, because it causes you to think of the spheres in this dogmatic way. And dogmatism is toxic and dangerous when it comes to the Kabbalah, because the Kabbalah is a way of thinking, and it involves essentially numerology. So if you want to understand what the Kabbalah is it's numerology. That's what it is. Plain and simple. As simple as a popped pimple. That's why we're not going to call you Dimple. Now, my sense is this. The Enneagram are the 9 spheres. These are the 9 spheres that are outlined by the Sufis as the nine spheres. The Norse people speak of it as the 9 worlds. These 9 emanations or 9 potentials. They have both an esoteric and an actualized expression. This is important to understand. The yin and the yang, the internal and the external, expressed both in the macrocosm and expressed in the microcosm. And because of the nature of the fractal universe that we're living in, these truths that are both symbolic and actualized both hold precedence in different ways. We'll get to this a little later. So when we look at Malkut, notice, let me take the chat away for a moment. Let's take it away. Take it away, take it away, take it away now. Take it away, take it away. Do you notice that Malkut has got 4 colors? Now, according to the Hermetic Kabbalah, and I have broken down the story about the Hermetic Kabbalah. I believe the Hermetic Kabbalah did not evolve from the Jewish Kabbalah. That is a lie. And I want us to understand this, because the Kabbalah was essentially verbal, non-written. It only started getting written at a particular time. Do you know that there are very old lore writings of Hermetic Kabbalah that might not be under that label, but the notion? And so when we speak about these 9 spheres or the 9 enneagrammic expressions, we are speaking about this. And we will explain to you when we look at the Enneagram why there are 22 paths. It's not because of this thing, why there are 22 archetypes, why the ancient Egyptians, when they were developing this Phoenician, or when it was being developed from that people that moved through time to become the Phoenicians, why they used 22 major arcana images, symbolic representations that became the expressions of the tarot and became the expressions of alphabetic letters that became the language that we're mostly speaking based upon a phonetic tongue. All of this comes back to sacred geometry, and it's mapping how sound, vibration emanates, becomes physical. So there are 9 actual spheres of activity. What is Malkut? Malkut is, and I want us to concentrate when I say this because it's important. Malkut, or in some traditions, Malkus, is the receptacle of the 9 spheres. The 9 spheres are working through Malkut. So this is why Malkut has 4 different, it's a cross in the center. And that cross is 4 different directions. So it's the 4 directions, it's the 4 worlds coming into union. Why 4? Because there are 3 fundamental triads working in this Kabbalistic system here, right? The supernal triad of the first 3 numbers, the monad, the duad, and the triad. Then we have the 4, the 5, and the 6 that makes the next triad. And then we have the 7, the 8, and the 9 that makes the next triad, right? And if anybody's confused about what I'm talking about, let me show you what I mean, because the information, it's all out there. You just got to take a look and it shall reveal itself from beyond the places of a book. So let's go. What just happened? There we go. It happened, ladies and gentlemen. So Saturns Square. Now, if we observe the Saturn Square, what do we see? We see the triad that's drawn in green, 1, 2, and 3. This is in the sigil. We see the second triad separating the triad from above from the triad from below. The 4, the 5, and the 6 represented as a linear expression here. This is what we're talking about when we speak about the axis mundi, the 4, the 5, and the 6, right? 4 plus 5 is 9 plus 6 is 15. 15 breaks down to 6, right? 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6, right? Then we've got 7 plus 8 plus 9, right? 7 plus 9, 7 plus 8 is 15, right? Plus 9 is 24. 24 breaks down to 6. What do we see? 6, 6, 6. I want us to understand what's going on here because this is importante. It's a very, very importante to understand why is the numbers 666 so very, very important. Never, ever you will use them in Italian cooking because a pasta doesn't taste good with the numbers. A 6, a 6, a 6 is on the plate. So the reason is fundamental to understanding the structure of the hexagram as it fits into the cube and as this is expressed, right, through the octahedron, which is space-time. We can see this. We can see this in the way that the sacred geometry is expressed by the 64 vectors of the chessboard, the 64 vectors of the vector equilibrium. Buckminster Fuller outlined how this math works. And we can see it in the 64 trigrams of the I Ching. We can also see it in the 64 angels of the system of the Gnostic, certain aspects of the Gnostic tradition, where they're the 64 angels that are administrated over by the 7 archangels with the primal angel reigning over this, making the 72 quinets. So this is fundamental to understanding the structure of space-time. 666. We see it expressed here in the Saturn Square, right? Very important. Notice that if you take it here and you take it quadrant by quadrant, you say 6 plus 1 is 7, right? 7 plus 8 is 15. Left to right, 15. 6. Let's say you say 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 plus 3 is 15. 15. Let's say you take it across 2, 9, and 4, 15. Right? Down. 4 plus 3 is 7. 7 plus 8, 15. 9 plus 5 plus 1, 15. 15. Whichever way you do this, you end up with 666. Whether you're going from down from the taking it across line by line, whether you're going line by line across, it adds up to that number. You cannot avoid that. It doesn't work that way. So this is important for us to recognize, because it is the structure of space-time. Now, I don't want to lose my place. Ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to lose my place. So these three triads that I was speaking about. Namaste, observer, observing. How are you? Welcome. And Darlene, I hope you're smiling. I hope you're all smiling. I hope this is a smiling contest and you are all taking time and being sweet with it. So Malkut represents, right, the coming together of these three triads, right? The 6, the 6, and the 6, right? The 1 plus 2 plus 3, 6. The 4 plus 5 plus 6, 6. The 7 plus 8 plus 9, 6. Three triads of 6, 6, 6, right? And the three triads of 6, 6, 6 add up to 18, right? The 1 and the 8. And when the 1 and the 8 are compounded, they are compounded into 1, they become 19, the essence of the sun, the radiation of the electricity, that is the prana that feeds life, that causes sugars to come into being. Sugars, potassium, through potassium, building the sugars, through the transmutation of light by plant living beings into crystals that can be utilized by other living beings. 666 is fundamental to understanding. Why it's the number of the beast, that's a whole nother conversation. That involves us getting into Yaldabaoth and exactly what the Gnostics understood, and it will take us a deep dive into the Templars. We'll do this in another talk, going into the Marcion tradition, the Manichaeists, who are the guys that were exterminated in the beginning of the Crusades. But anyway, there's a whole lot of groups of traditions that kept this knowledge, and they were persecuted throughout history. And it's got to do with the 666. And the 666 is in the plan because it gives us an insight into the nature and the structure of this physical reality. People don't like to look there. They don't like to acknowledge it, but it is what it is. There ain't no running, baby. There ain't no running away. Yeah, I was talking about the Templars as well as the what are they called, man? Why can't I think? The Cathars. Oh my gosh, the Cathars were also understanding this Gnostic knowledge and truth, which goes back to Yaldabaoth, whichever way you want to take it. So these three triads are represented in Malkut, right? As the olive color, as the citrine color, and as the russet color. Russet on the left, citrine on the right, citrine above. And these resolve into the black. The black represents these three elements in Binah's space. The space that emanates through the three oceans, through the watery presence, the waters above and waters below. So this cosmic space becomes a soup in which these three potentials can move. And these three potentials, known as the three mother letters in the Kabbalah, produce these effects that we experience as Malkut. But Malkut is not a sphere in itself. This is a Kabbalistic misconception. And even if you go with the books, they will explain that though that the 10th sphere is a sphere where all the other spheres are acting together as a system. Yes. So when we're looking at the Enneagram explains this phenomenon a little bit better than this image. And another reason why I do not use this blasphemous image is because it's a structured way to think. And that structured way of thinking causes, look how lopsided this image is. Look at it. Is there anything about this image that's beautiful? Does it express the dynamic harmony of nature? Does this image express the fractal nature of consciousness becoming matter? Is this the kind of image you see displayed in nature? No. Do you see enneagrams in nature? Yes. Do you see these 9 red stars that make beautiful geometry that are expressing these fundamental principles? Absolutely. So I like to keep my concepts in alignment with nature and use nature's own language to explain concepts. This is the bowel movements of an over celebrated intellectual mind that has gotten top heavy and has ended up mouth farting all of this brown blubber everywhere that people wrote into books. And we can probably say it's largely due to the likes of Agrippa and others that this became so standardized in the occult model. Welcome, Mind. I hope thine mind. I hope you're well. I hope you guys are having a great day. Dobra Mosfera. Big love. Namaste. So yeah, the occult PSYOP is there in order to mislead people so that people become attracted to this Kabbalistic word, the idea of the Kabbalah. They give out a lot of truth in these books, but the truth becomes polluted. It's sort of like giving someone a recipe for how to make medicine, but telling them to put too much of one ingredient in so that the medicine becomes a lethal toxin, right? Poisonous and dangerous. Let's use an example. The arm prick adventures of 2020. The medicine became poison. Indigo? No. Come here. Come here, my girl. I've got people coming to my home now, so do please come here. Come here, my darling. Come sit next to daddy. Come here. There we go. You sit down next to daddy. We don't need to bark. Okay? You don't need to be scared. Yeah, so daddy's a girl abuela. Huh? So daddy's a girl abuela. So hopefully she won't bark. I'll just sit here and stroke her while I talk, and that should keep her nice and calm because she knows her daddy's got her back here. And she's okay. All right? Okay, so don't need to bark. Daddy knows what's going on. Daddy's fully in charge here. Don't stress. So we've got one of the owners' family coming to just look at the house. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with this house. Because the lady I rent from, she passed away last year. And Ori, you come lie here with me too. Come here. Ori's not barking out of threat. Ori's barking out of like, let's play. Come here. Come here. Come lie down here next to Indigo. Come on. Down here. Down. Okay, he's got his spot. He's got his spot back there. Good. So, yeah, a lot of this PSYOPs nonsense has become a real thorn in the side of truth, and they've given people a very expansive form of the Kabbalah, where they've given you pretty much all of the truth, but they've wrapped it up in a dodgy, toxic picture that causes you to misunderstand and misconstrue the fundamental truths, like the 10 spheres, right? The 10th sphere doesn't exist as the other 9 spheres do. The 10th sphere exists as an octave, the next octave of the 9 spheres. This is a deeply occulted esoteric truth. Lie down, Indigo. Yeah. Lie down, yeah, my darling. This is a deeply occulted esoteric truth. I've got to keep a check on her, otherwise she's going to go and bark. This is a deeply occulted esoteric truth that is a big problem, and it causes us to misunderstand. The moment we take that out of the picture, right, we remove that. Let me give you another insight into these spheres, right? So we've got Kether, which means crown, right? Now, they will tell you that the 5th sphere, right, which is Javura or Jabura, Jabur, right? Or in some traditions called pakat, right? Those are different titles for this fifth sphere. Relates to the numerological energy of number 5. Do you want to go down? Gotham wants to go and investigate what's going on. Whoa! Oh my gosh! Did he jump up? Oh, it's just a feather. Okay, it's just a feather. thought it was a special parcel just for Dad, like special delivery. The way that they've expressed these spheres is in itself. If you read a book, it's going to tell you that the fifth sphere means will, right? And that its symbol is a sword, right? Now, there is truth in this, but it's occulted and it's hidden and it's become a lie, right? The fifth sphere, the number 5, is the number of Mercury, right? It's not the number of Mars. Yes, it plays a role in Mars. Yes, Mars has got undertones. Yes, it's got elements that relate to the discipline of Mars. However, it isn't the native sphere of Mars. It's the native sphere of Mercury, Mercurius. What does that represent, the number 5? Does it represent will? I'm sorry, it doesn't. Does it represent free will? Ah, yes. The number 5 represents freedom. Hence, Mercury rules over travel. And travel is an expression of your free will to go where you please. So when you think of the number 5 as representing the will, you are misconceptualizing how the energy of the numbers work through your system. And that misconception means you will never be able to totally actualize your own will, because the will has nothing to do with the number 5. Number 5 is the most concrete and secure structure that exists. And because it's the most concure and grounded and secure structure, it can travel anywhere. It never loses its integrity. So free will is an expression of that integrity. So when you think of number 5, and you see them talking about this, the number 5 representing will, 5 represents free will. And Gemini in the Kabbalah relates to Zain, which is a blade, which is a sharp blade, conceptualized often as a dagger or a sword. So now we see why they have the symbol of that for the symbol of number 5. But you see they've mixed it up with Mars. Mars has got nothing to do with that. I'm sorry. they've played a game on your brain. Number 5. And so they've put these color codes there. If you want to understand the correct color for that sphere, try the color orange. Ooh. Orange is a color of free will. It's a color of expansiveness. It's light. Yeah, the range that light can. It's the freest expression of the color of light. So there's just one idea. Now, what is will? Numerology. When we look at the Enneagram, what is will? Will is an expression of the number. I mean, this is just so obvious. Number 1. Why? Because there's one objective. That's one objective. Will. It's a point inside a circle. And that is the point. And that moves towards that point. It has no distraction. It has no impurity. It has nothing to hold it back. It is will in its purest form. Number 1. Right. Now, how does number 1 interact with number 5? That divine purity of will, as will is, which is the sun. Number 1 is the sun. When you understand this, if you read your books on Kabbalah, they will tell you that if you want to connect with the first sphere, contemplate and meditate on one point. People go, oh, wow, 1 point. Yeah. Then they tell you that your will is related to number 5. What has happened when you think of your will as number 5? You put the impurity of Mercury into the solar house. What does this do for your psyche unconsciously? This produces within your mind a busyness of Mercury, of Gemini, so that you can't concentrate. You can't meditate because you're thinking back to front. You want to learn to meditate? Understand the difference between 5 and 1. you understand those differences, your mind now, when you meditate, will be more quiet because it won't be unconsciously trying to process nonsense that doesn't make sense. It will be in alignment with common sense, and the alignment of common sense will be expressed. So the number 1 is the expression of will. Number 5 is expression of free will. How is will expressed within the dynamic of the human being? Through our emotional body as free will. So you see, 5 has a connection with will, indeed, because free will is the way in which the will is expressed through human beings. So you can see that resonance, and you can see why they have occulted that to superimpose will with free will. It could be that it's an accident, right? It could be that the guys who were writing all the books just didn't really practice the Kabbalah and didn't really understand it. And they had incomplete perspective and understanding of how the system works due to a lack of actual practice. And this is another problem I've outlined in previous podcasts, that there is this problem with the people that were writing the books. They read books and wrote books about books that they read, written by people that had read books and written books about people that had read books that had written books about books read. At which point was there practice? Well, there wasn't any practice. It was just reading books, conceptualizing ideas. And this in itself is a fundamental problem. It holds us back from understanding the fundamentals and getting into perspective with what exactly it is that we're dealing with here. It's not going to provide any window into truth if we mix these concepts up. So understand that relationship between 1 and 5, and you will see why phi and the pentagram expresses phi so perfectly, right? Which becomes 1, 1, 1, right? And then 2, because it's 1 plus 1. And then 3, because it's 2 plus 1. And then 3 plus 2 becomes 5. Now notice that from 1 jumping to 2, jumping to 3, those are 3 aspects, right? 3 emanative jumps of octave. And those 3 emanative jumps jump the 4th jump, and they become 5. So 4 is the mystic number of 5, because it takes 4 jumps to become 5. So 5 is the midpoint, 5 fingers, right? 5 toes, 5 limbs. There's a reason why the human mechanism is built according to this geometry, because it expresses the sacred expression of phi in the universe. And this is why 5 relates to life and freedom, right? The number of man is the number 5. Often you will see it represented in different occult texts. This is the deep esoteric understanding of this. So there's just one example of how they have misled you. Let's look at the Mazloth, for example. I think I mentioned the Mazloth in the somewhere in the text. Did I? Did I mention the Mazloth? I hope I did. The Mazloth, aka zodiac of the Kabbalah. Okay, here's another classic misconception. They will tell you that the number 2 is the number of the Mazloth, right? This is what the texts will say. This is what the rabbis say in their Kabbalistic texts, which was never supposed to be written down. You've got to understand, these people are lying. The people that did know the truth lied in the texts, and then the other people that followed those texts and copied those texts were just too stupid to know that they were copying lies. And the people who lied for a damn good reason, because they noticed that the information was getting out and they wanted to control it. They didn't want it in everybody's hands. So they had to produce a misleading version of it, just enough misleading of it so that it can't be challenged as truth, right? If there's 2 different texts and one person's written down some absolute truth, all they had to do was popularize a version of the text that's almost the same as that, slightly different, but a few fundamental errors. Sort of like, if I don't want you to learn to build a house and somebody has freely put the architectural plans out on the internet for you, I've just got to get those plans and make a couple of structural dangerous points and make that become viral. so that when you see those other plans, you'll think that those must be a mistake because all the other plans, the viral versions, are exactly the same plans, just there's a mistake there. And then people can go out and talk about TikTokers and YouTubers with shorts and stuff of how that mistake is there and basically rub it out of existence. And then my occulted version would be there. And if you build your house like that, your house collapses. And then you have to come to me, the real architect, and I'll give you the real plans for how to build your house. But then you have to give me money. You see how that could work? This is what we're talking about on a more esoteric, energetic level. So the Mazloth represents the 12 signs of the zodiac. It's the macrocosmic wheel. And these 12 signs of the zodiac are emanations of the 7 potentials, which are emanations of the 3 potentials, which is an emanation of the divine will. So the 1 becomes 3, the 3 becomes 7, and the 7 becomes 12, right? And these 12 express the 9 potentials, right? Which is the cardinal, the fixed, and the mutable, right? And these 3 elements are expressed throughout the system. And so when we recognize this, we recognize how these 3 elements become an expression of these 3 triads, because each element fits into the other one of its kind. That's why we have 3 versions of 3, right? There are 3 sixes, and they're not the same 6, but the 3 sixes are part of a synchronous 18, which is a synchronous 9, which is the Enneagram, which is the system that the Kabbalah is modeled upon. So the Mazloth, you will be told, is related to Chokmah. Chokmah is the number 2. I have never heard more diddly pot bimble bomble in my life. They may as well be vomiting into a bucket and flushing it down the toilet and calling it, calling it a divine expression of truth. Because the number 2 is the house of the loon, the luna, the house of the moon, right? What does the moon represent? Polarity, and it represents potential. It represents the powerful potential. So we have the divine emanation of will, number 1. And that divine emanation of will produces a potential, which is the number 2. The number 2 as the potential is then expressed as form, because that potential takes form to embody the essence, the seed of the will. That form is 3. The form of 3 requires space through which to act, to manage and express the will through the potential of 2, through into the form of 3 that becomes imprinted upon the space through 4. 4 represents space, right? This space then needs to be bound. The binding of the space is bound through the 5, right? And the pent up energy is then controlled and limited. The limitations of 5 give definition and meaning to the space. You hear that? Definition and meaning. Are we speaking about Gemini? Definition and meaning, communication. Number 5, Mercury, definition and meaning. I hope we're paying attention. We're getting insight into just how much PSYOP there is in those books, how dangerous they are if you believe them. The definition and meaning of the number 5 that is now produced the movement, right? Because the definition and meaning produces a movement, and that is the movement of the energy that is expressed by the space, because the space of 4 is fundamentally inert. It's an inert expression of space, and to understand that it's an inert expression of space is to get a deep understanding and a concept of just exactly what we are delving into here in this adventure of thought. 6 then becomes the sphere of harmony. Why the sphere of harmony? We need to reconcile this difference between these meanings of number 5, right? These defined meanings and the space of 4. You see, they exist as a set, almost, you could say, which is why they've tried to give you this idea, yeah, with the 4 and the 5 sitting across from the poles. But they've done so in a bad way. Do not disturb me, Joshua. I'm busy. Please. I'm busy. I will take your computer for 7 days if you say one more word. So he needs to understand. I told him not to disturb me. that got his attention really fast. 7 days, no computer. It's holidays. If he doesn't get his computer for 7 days, he can't learn more about code writing. He's a 9-year-old that wants to learn code writing. There are people here, and he's coming to tell me that, like, they're not coming in to disturb me because I'm busy. Like I said, they could come to the house and take a look around, but not to disturb me because I'm busy. That's how it is. I'm doing them a favor. And the favor I'm done is quite enough already. So, yeah, the definition produces these limitations, and these limitations contradict the very idea of space, because space represents expansion, right? This expansion of 3, which is form, has to expand into space, which is 4. So 4 represents the proverbial negative application of expansion, which holds an element of infinity, but is also very structured and finite in itself. But that finite element of space is a seed that is hidden, and it is only coming into actualization through 5 because of movement. And because of movement, we thus have the rotational axis of energy. That rotational axis of energy needs to be bound in harmony so that there is a continuity. The harmony is 6. So 6 becomes the hexagram representing the centrifugal and centripetal forces expressed by the orange and the green triangle here, right? The centripetal and the centrifugal potentials are bound by the axis mundi. And if we look at this image, we can see the number 6 is the proverbial point. The proverbial point. That is, everything is hinged upon that number 6. And number 4 is the other point that everything is hinged upon. So the 4 and the 6 are the hinging points, and the 5 is that movement that represents. So you could see 4 is the space, 5 is the movement you see in the center of the blue line, and 6 is the harmony that maintains the law. So when we're talking about the law, we are now looking at the number 6, because the law is what maintains harmony. So the limitations of 5 are maintained by causal effects in the 6th element, the 6th sphere. And so we speak of Venus representing the law, which is why when you want to learn about divine law and get initiated, you need to get into the gateway of the mysteries, Venus, the arch, right? To get initiated into the law, the esoteric laws, principles, so that you can gain an insight. 6 happens to be the esoteric number of 7, hence the 7 hermetic principles, and the 6 principles that express the fundamental state of reality, which is a mental state, produces the 7 principles of Hermes. But the 7 principles of Hermes are really just 6 actions, and those 6 actions represent the 7 principles. So number 6 holds its power in the harmony and maintaining this law. This then needs to be bound, further bound, and it needs to be bound through the eternal potential. The eternal potential is 7. 7 gives the harmony of space and time a particular line of potential, which isn't bound through linear time, but is bound through the principles of the spinning and turning of the Mazloth, the cycles, the eternal cycles of the Mazloth around the 7 fundamental principles, which are 6 actions. Hence, the 7 principles are bound in a hexagram, right? With the will at the center, the sun, the circle with the dot in it at the center, and the 3 principles above and the 3 principles below, representing the yang and the yin potentials. And this becomes expressed through its eternal potential through 7. This eternal potential needs to be defined as a beginning and an ending and an alpha and omega so that the work can be done. The doing of this work is the number 8, Saturn. Saturn is doing the work of this eternal presence of 7 that is expressing the harmony and the laws of the space that contains the truths, the fundamental truths of the will of 1, moving through the potential of 2, as the potential of 2 becomes formed as a form of 3 that is embedded within the space of 4 and applied to the movement of 5 so that the will can now have somewhere to move. This is with the association with 5, with the will that you see, that misconception. The free will is that movement. The 1 is the will, but the will needs to move. The will of 1 moves through the element of 5. This is why they give you these misconceptions and why they stick, because on an intuitive and unconscious level, you can sense there is an association, but you don't know what it is. Here you see the association quite clearly. And so this 5 is this movement of all of these potentials that are expressing the world's emanation through the law, because the will has moved. And in order for the will to move, there has to be rules, the laws of 6, in order to give structure to what the movement moves towards. Through the eternal potential of space into the finite structures of time. And now we start to see the will emanating into time. And in this emanation of time, we find the will reaching its completion in 9. And 9 becomes the complete expression of that will, which is the impulse of 1 will, moving through the tree of life to come to the foundation, number 9. Yeah, Yesod, the foundation. And in that foundation, it is complete. And now we start the cycle again. And by starting the cycle again, we bring what has been completed into actualization in the next world. And the next cycle of the Enneagram is 1. But 1 carries with it no number, for it has to cross the event horizon. And it comes out of the event horizon with a little backpack on its back, carrying no number. And we define that no number as a circle, and we call it 0. And we attach that no number, which represents antimatter, or probably not the right word, represents cosmic space on its back. And we represent it as a 1 with a 0 next to it, so we can remember that 1 has taken a trip through cosmic space and been reinvented, a new potential expressed as 10. And so we see the 10th so-called sphere as an expression of 1. Once again, this is why in Kabbalistic law they'll say that Kether is in Malkut. What do they mean? That Malkut is another Kether? Yes, Malkut is another Kether. Think about that when you read that, and you'll see how much psyops there goes into it. Now, whether the psyops was done on purpose or whether it's just because the idiots that wrote the books didn't know any better, I honestly don't know, and I honestly don't care, because a psyop is a psyop. Whether the person gave it to you was ignorant, or whether the person that gave it to you was fully knowing, it's still a psyop. It doesn't change, and it's going to confuse your perspective of reality and give you this misconception. So we've gone now through the tree of life, through the Enneagram, right? The true Enneagram, the tree of life. And it's brought us to understand how these concepts are sort of, how they've been occulted. And you might notice that the expressions that I've given you of the 9 numbers are more in tune with these expressions. When you look at the Saturns Square, it will make a lot more sense. So let me entertain you. Ooh. Don't even ask me why I had a Robbie Williams track running through my head. Now, this is really annoying. Is that JPEG file? That will do. Pretty sure that will do. Let's see if we got the Enneagram there. There we go. So here we have the Enneagram. Right. Now, we can see these three aspects, right? The three emanations. The red triangle, 1, 4, 7. The blue triangle, 2, 4, 8. And the yellow triangle, 3, 6, 9. The element of the bull of heaven, the yellow triangle. Prana, life force, 3, 6, 9. And then that prana fits into another subset of 3. And 3, 6, 9, as you know, adds up to 18, which is 9. The next subset, which is 2 plus 5 plus 8, becomes 15, which is 6. So we've got 9, 6. And the third subset, right, which is the red, the fiery element, adds up to 1 plus 7 plus 4, which is 12, which is 3. You see, 9, 6, 3. So 3, 6, 9 within the yellow subset, the yellow triangle, which is the expression of the bull of heaven, which is the expression of the prana of the element of air, is expressed as 9 that fits into a subset of 3 triads that produce 9, 6, and 3. Now, this is important to understand the mother letters, because what we've been looking at until now has been the actual expressions in matter through the macrocosmic potential. We are now looking at the microcosm. The microcosm is distinct from the macrocosm. The relationships between the numerations. So these numbers, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, these are the sephiroth. And why are there 22? Why are there 22 major arcana? Why are there 22 letters of the Paleo-Hebrew and the Phoenician and Hebrew alphabets? Because it says in the Kabbalah, there were first 3 mother letters. There were only first 3. And the 3 mother letters gave birth to the other letters. The 3 mother letters gave birth to the 7, right? And to the 12. So the 3 gave birth to the 7. The 7 is the Elohim, and that gave birth to the 12, which is the Mazloth. So the Mazloth, just bringing it back a moment, just to bring you clarity so that we can understand why I'm showing you another PSYOP. They will tell you that the Mazloth is number 2. No, number 2 is potential. Number 4 is where the form enters into space. That is the Mazloth. The Mazloth is embodied in the number 4. But go and read your books. They'll tell you that the Mazloth is related to the number 2. Some books may give you some more insight into this, but watch out for that occulting. The number 2 is unmanifest. It's pure potential. How can pure potential represent the zodiac? Come on, man. That's ridiculous. It's the dumbass quest, the dumbass thing I've ever heard in my life, right? Number 4, on the other hand, represents the 4 winds, the 4 directions, the 4 cardinal points, which is what's mapped out in the zodiac, right? That's why we have 4 seasons. That's why we have 4 solstices, right? The zodiac, number 4. So, but it carries the potency of the potential. And the potential of the zodiac acts as a seed within the heart of number 2, but only as a seed. That seed is only planted in number 4. And the seed of number 2, which is the form in 3, is planted into the heart of 4. And the growth of that seed in the plant of the heart of 4 becomes the movement of expression of the spinning and the whirling in the body of 5, right? The body of 5, that spinning, gives expression of an eternal principle of cycles. And the eternal principles of cycles are then further bound in 8 in the linear structures of time, where each cycle breaks down something from the previous cycle. So there's continuity. And those 8 cycles of time are bound in the completion of 9, where everything comes back to the rest. And the rest of 9, the final resting place of 9, is the final egg, the beginning, the space without number from whence everything arose. So you can see it's a movement that moves across the water, and it ends up back where it started. in the point of rest before it took numeration. So both number 9 and both number 1 touch that hallowed place. This is why you'll find in the ancient times the number 9 was so highly mystified and expressed by the Sufis and various different traditions, and they speak about it in the Vedic tradition of the 9 planetary influences. That's why they draw to this day a 9-sided astrological chart. They've got different types that they draw, right? One of the types that they draw is very similar to, if you look at the image that I've used in the center of the thumbnail for this picture, that is not a Vedic thing, but you'll look at it and you'll see I've added in and I've shown you how the 4 tempers work. The 4 tempers are related to the 4 worlds, and that's where we're going to dive in now. We're going to show you more misconceptions, more, and I'm just giving you a set of flavors, a set of images, so that you can see how many mistruths there are and how many things have been misconcepted and occulted by these books that you're reading, so that you can understand. If I am pointing out these half-truths and untruths, how many more are they hidden? And they are hidden and they aren't easy to see. You will only experience this through practice. And I don't mean practice. I don't mean practicing for 1 year or 5 years. I mean practice. Multiple times per day, spending lots and lots and lots of time and energy practicing day after day after day, month after month after month, year after year after year, decade after decade after. And then these things start to become relevant because you see them, you experience them on the inner planes directly, and there is no need for these books or concepts or any rubbish. All of those books hold you back from being able to experience this directly. I want you to understand how the mind works. Fill the mind with rubbish and nonsense, even if it's mostly true. That rubbish and nonsense will become a hurdle that restricts you. So, the Mazloth is rooted in 4. So 4 becomes expression of the Mazloth. 4 is knowledge, right? 4 on the Enneagram represents stagnancy and its worst, crystallization, right? It is the builder. Now, do we see why the number 4 is the builder on the Enneagram that I've created here? Just as these words are just words that I've chosen. Achiever. Well, you can achieve things by the steady cycles of time. You can work upon what you did before. The next cycle, you can add to that. The next cycle, add to that. And the next cycle, add to that until you've built something, right? So achiever becomes expression of the number 4. But that's the act of building is the number 4 because it involves crystallization, right? You can see optimization of number 3. That's form, right? Form optimizers. Number 2, empath, right? 2 is the M path. M represents water. Water represents resonance. Resonance represents the potential of vibration. And the path of that vibration is a pure potential of everything in the universe, right? And number 1, the leader, you notice led, it points back to number 8. So 1 and 8 have got a mystical connection, right? And that mystical connection of 1 and 8, you can see it there as that green line, right? And so you'll see these relationships. They're very important, right? Lead can be turned into gold. Hello, what are the alchemists on about? So the metal of number 1 is gold. But gold and lead are connected. This is why you can turn lead into gold. You can actually do it. It can be done if one has the particular affinities and knowledge to do it. So we have all of these different elements here. The adventurer of 5. 5 adds vent. What does a vent do? It allows air, prana, life force to move. To add vent is to invent. The inventor is also. So the adventure of 5 is to bring prana flowing through the system, the movement, so that the number 4, which is crystallizing, can now move these crystals around so that the whole thing doesn't just become stuck and inert, right? And art of number 6, to art is to be, right? To be is an expression of number 5. The free will of 5 is an occult realization of the potentials expressed in 6. So 5 is the esoteric number of 6, right? And when we recognize this relationship, we see that 6, art is being. To be an artist is to be. You have to be in the moment and allow your being to express being, and that's called art, right? Whatever form that is. It's got to do with the expression of being who you are. So 6 becomes expression of harmony, and these laws that govern who you are, when they are bound in a state of harmony, you can just allow your natural free will to flow through you. And the flowing of that free will of number 5 through you in number 6 becomes an expression of art. Then the mystic, right? What's the mist? The mist is that you can't see through the mist, right? You can't see through the mist, but you can see that there's something there. In order for the mist to clear, you have to have clear parameters. When the clear parameters are moving, what is space as we see it? We see space as moving time. Or we see time as moving space. Sorry, what is time that we see it as? We see time as moving space, right? In number 7, you can't see the moving space, but you're aware that there's space moving, but you can't see it. Why can't you see it? Because the parameters have not been set between the beginning and the end. The beginning and the end, the parameters of Alpha and Omega are set by the Lord of Time, number 8. The Lord of Time in the 8th sphere sets those parameters, and so we have a clear lineage of time, a linear structure that we can work with. And that linear structure of time is how we can see. We can see the flow. In 7, it's deep and it's very abstracted. And number 9, right? The activator. That is the action of the new reality. That is the completion of all of these 8 principles. And so 9 becomes that expression of completion. And now what was in the will of 1 has moved through the entire series of spheres till it becomes an action. And a defined action defined by the number of 8, which is the mystic number of 9, but experienced as an action of 9. And once this action has found its completion, it resolves itself back to the center of the Enneagram where there is no number, right? And in that place of no number, we call it Pluto, the plow toe, the towing or pulling of the proverbial plow of the heavens, plow toe. That is the place where there is no form, the formless, that we could consider as the divine feminine womb of creation. And all of this is happening through the expression of that womb of creation, within that womb of creation, as a result of that womb of creation. And the womb of creation is expressing all of this through these numerations, which is the Father. So these expressions we're looking at, these numerations, this is the Father expressing will through the divine emanations that are a product of the womb. The womb, which is that negative space. I use the word negative very carefully because it can have many different connotations. So here we see the Enneagram becoming an expression of all of this. Now, I promised you we would look at the 4 worlds. How far are we into this? How deep are we diving? 108. I wanted to end this in around about an hour and a half. So I've got a bit of time. So the 4 worlds are really important. The 4 worlds, as we mentioned before, are the 666 emanations of the 3 triads, the 1, the 2, and the 3, the top triad, the 4, the 5, and 6, the middle triad, the 7, the 8, and the 9, right? And we see these triads expressed here, right? The blue line's a triad, the green line's a triad, and the orange is a triad. And these 3 triads are expressing these 3 fundamental principles, 666. And we notice that all 6 of these are expressed as a subtotal sigil. And that sigil becomes the expression of time through matter, right? Very important to understand that. Time through matter. Hence, it contains all 9 aspects of the Enneagram. And the fact that it contains all 9 numbers, all 9 aspects of the Enneagram means that it is in itself complete. And the action of completion of time in matter is what we're looking at when we look at the Saturn Square. So this then relates to the four worlds. So the first world, Atzilut, right? That's the fundamental plane of existence. From a shamanic perspective, we call this the divine realm, right? From a Vedic perspective, we would call this the causal plane. The second realm is the realm of creation. This is the 4, the 5, and the 6. What did I say about 4, 5, and 6? Why is it called the realm of creation? Because understanding the true meaning of these numbers will explain this to you. The 4 is the space that holds the form of 3 that is carried by the potential of 2 to express the will of 1, which is will. And so these 3 aspects of will are bound in 4, right? And 4 becomes activated by 5, right? And the activation of 5 brings that to the harmony of law. So the 4, the 5, and the 6 represents the space where it's happening, being made active by the movement of number 5, right? And the freeness of will for movement to be expressing the crystals of 4 into the divine law, which is 6. That's how creation happens, when space moves as per the law. Space moves as per the law. That you could think of that as a special number sequence. If you're ever going to build affirmations, knowing these words and how they relate will give you an occulted, esoteric understanding of how to create very powerful affirmations. And these affirmations can then be turned into careful, numerologically aligned phrases. And these numerologically aligned phrases, where you've counted your syllables and you've counted your words, you've counted your letters, and they all have a significance in the greater scheme of what you're trying to express, right? Can then be broken down into a sigil. And you then have a very powerful tool. This is how you create true sigils. For those that want to know about true sigil magic, we will discuss this at another point. There's been a very limited, and within this field of witchcraft and magic and sorcery, you will find that these ideas are represented, but represented in a very watered down way. Hence, witchcraft is the fast that it is today. Hence, magic is something that is done by old men and Freemasons and stuff, and wearing silly gowns and playing with cute toys, lacking the understanding of the fundamentals. And the sorcery is being used. That has got to do with binding beings. You can bind intelligences using this knowledge. It becomes sorcery. So the creative sphere is the 4, the 5, and the 6, right? And this is the straight line of the axis mundi. The axis mundi is the creative sphere through which creation happens. In Vedic cosmology, this is the Shashumna, that is the spine. The spine. The spine of the world. And creation happens due to yang and yin, expressing potentials of that into 2 directions in order for the third presence to become seen. So here we see the dynamic expression of the first 3 spheres, but it's expressed 3 times, right? And we see that it's binding the law. We see the geometry of form expressing the continuity and the harmony, that each thing is relevant and relative to the other things, and they make different patterns. And so the patterning of creation, we can see the artistic hand of God, as it were, moving across the waters of space and time, is expressed here in its most pure and natural way. So we then see that is now the second reality. We call this Bariya in Kabbalistic knowledge. Namaste, Sophia. I hope you're well. I hope you're raving. Having a good day. Kali, namaste. How are you doing? What made me choose the 9 nonogram? It's because, dear Kali, that is the structure of space-time. You see it in nature. If you go and sit in nature for long enough and you really contemplate nature and all her beauty and all her magical potential and form, you will see these forms. You will see it in the water. You will see it in the way that things grow. It will be expressed. And the 9 fundamental principles come from Chaldean numerology. So the Chaldeans had great knowledge of this numerology, which is what the Kabbalah is. They've occulted it and hidden it from us. It's just basically a highly advanced system of numerology that can be used to understand and decode the universe and actually be able to manipulate different forces by the knowledge of these numbers. It's the purest form of language that there is number. So the Chaldeans carried this knowledge, and this knowledge came through Chaldea. That particular form that I use, this image you're seeing right here, comes from Chaldea. It's not that new age occulted nonsense that was created by Ikazo, which is, well, it's new age. It comes from this last century. That other so-called Enneagram that everybody calls an Enneagram didn't exist 200 years ago. It didn't exist 500 years ago. It didn't exist 1,000 years ago. It was made up. It was made up in 1911, I believe, by what's his face? What's his face, man? You guys can go and find. Ikazo got this image, and then he misconstrued some works that he had read by different Arabic writers about the 9 spheres, and he tried to mix and match them up, and he got his own sort of version, but it was heavily affected by psychology and the PSYOP artists of our so-called education systems. Those are controlled PhDs and doctorates and all that nonsense. They got hold of that Enneagram system and they mangle it up so that the numbers are not in state of continuity. And if you do not understand the essence of what the numbers mean, it's pointless. It's as useless as as wet wood for making a fire. My kaka is cold, but it's still yeah, so this is a very ancient symbol. Where this is a fairly modern symbol. How old is this symbol? It's only a few centuries old. They fed us this mumbo jumbo. This is opposed to the other symbol. We look at this symbol, and this symbol is at least 3,000 years old. More like 4,000 or 5,000. And I reckon they got it from the sacred geometry from the Akkadians. And at least 4,000 years old. At least 3,000 to 4,000 years old. In fact, we've got references of this being in coming from lore from that point, and it was stored by the Arabics. Obviously, we had these crazy fundamental Christians that ran around burning all the books, burning everything they could get, defacing every piece of knowledge that they could find. Luckily, the Arabic people, respect to them, kept the knowledge alive, and they had massive libraries where they saved everything, and thank God they were able to protect it from the crazy Catholics that were out there on book burning sprees. You see, the problems with the Catholics was they'd like murdered everybody who knew the truth, right? The Cathars, the Marcians, even the Manichaeists got a lot of flack. The Gnostics, they'd basically taken them all and wiped them out. And then anybody else who tried to hold the knowledge was accused of witchcraft, and they were burnt and they were tortured, and they had pretty much washed all this sacred knowledge away. So witchcraft had lost its roots. Magic had lost its teeth, right? The occult was hidden, became highly occulted. The only people allowed to know the knowledge of the witchcraft, of the occult, of magic were those that were the priest fathers. And that's how the Jesuit order was formed. But this is the ancient, thousands of years old version. This is the modern, few hundred years old version, right? This modern version is so occulted, it's so messed up, it's so twisted, it's not even funny. So I'm getting back to the 3 worlds, which are essentially the 4 worlds. I'll explain to you how. The third world, so we said the second world is Bariya, which is the forces of creation, right? And these creation then have to have to produce formation. So the fundamental state of reality, which is the first Atzilut, needs to become creatively impregnate through the creative presence, right? So the creative essence is female. Let's just be clear about this. In its nature, the first essence is the king, right? That's Atzilut. It's masculine. It's an expression of will, how will expresses itself. The second is female. It's how the will is received and how that receiving of the will becomes an embodiment, right? Then the third sphere, which is Yetzirah, is taking the fetus and the baby of Bariah and bringing it into the world, actively birthing it. Once again, active expressions. So we now have another masculine element expressed here because it's expressing action, the action of bringing the seed of the original potential into creative womb, where the womb of that seed is now taken out of the womb through action to be put into the state of potential completion. So the 7, the 8, and the 9 becomes the sphere of formation. And so they haven't lied to you with regards to these terms specifically. You want to come up? Huh? There's a kitty. Oh, she's a moody little bugger, hey? She's a moody little bugger. Yes. Oh, that's a daddy. I want attention. This little Bubsy wants attention. So you're going to slip, buddy. No. You're not jumping off there. You're not jumping off there. You're not jumping off there. Where do you want to go? Huh? Where do you want to go? So the expressions of this, yeah, do you want to go down again? I'll tell you what. I'll let you choose. You can go down. No, you don't want to go down. You can go there. How's that sound? So sorry about that. These emanations of the 9 potentials that we're expressing, which is the 9 spheres, then come into its completion in the formative world of Yetzirah, masculine. As a result of the creative world of Bariah acting as a womb, so that the masculine expression of Atzilut can reach its point of completion. Now, in the process of these 3 worlds, right, bringing the point of the will to the finalization of completion in 9, this becomes in itself an entire process. This process is thus holding all 3 of these worlds in a state of harmony, which is revolving around the number 6. Why 6 is important, why it is a gateway to the mysteries. So this is why we have Malkut representing the Asiya, the 4th world. Okay. Now, where's the occulted part? So far, I haven't really shown you too much. Okay, here's where the occulted part is. Pay attention, because this is where it gets real. Right. They will tell you that Atzilut is archetypal reality. It's not altogether untrue. It's not altogether untrue. But it's more like, I would call it primeval reality. Probably a better word. The archetypes are expressed through Bariah, the creative, right? This is the archetypes that become the fetus, as it were, of creation. So the fundamental, we can use the word archetypal because it does sort of carry nuances. I think primeval is a better choice of words, but that's my personal nuance there. The reason that will help us is because then we can see that the creative world is where the archetypes operate. Now, they will tell you that the place where the archetypal worlds well, archetypal potentials are expressed is the creative sphere, which is Bariya, which it is, the second world of emanations. However, they will tell you that that's related to the intellect and to the mind. And I'll be like, yeah, okay, this isn't untrue, but here's where they catch you. They catch you with a double left and a right hook, and then a left uppercut, and then they finish the story with an MP that adjusts the shape of your forehead and your head a little bit, right? and then they grab you in the bottle opener under the arm, flip you over onto your back so that you land on your back and you winded as well. That's what they're doing to you. How are they doing this? They tell you that Yetzirah, the sphere of formation, is about emotion. And at which point we go, hold on. Woo, 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 woo. You should have alarm bells ringing. You should have alarm bells ringing at this point. If you aren't having alarm bells ringing, you're not paying attention. The sphere of formation is the third reality or sphere or series, or the third series of emanations, if you will, which is Yetzirah. It's masculine. Masculine is active. Are emotions masculine and active? Or are thoughts masculine and active? Can you, the emotions are more just something that we experience. We become receptive, not active in the sphere of emotion, right? The sphere of action is the sphere of thought. I can act through my thoughts. When I'm thinking, it's like I'm doing that with my mind. I'm doing that. I'm thinking this. I'm doing that. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. Emotion isn't like, oh, I'm emotion and feeling this. No, these feelings are like currents that we just become aware of. It's a receptive. So the emotional sphere is actually the astral sphere. The astral sphere is actually Bariya. Okay. Now they say it's intellect. Well, let's get down to this. It is intellect, but they've misconstrued what intellect means. Intellect means learning, intellecture. Okay. But we've rationalized that intellect is just rational logic. Yes, it is, but it's also emotion. You see, we've been taught that the emotional intelligence is null and void, but there is an intuitive element to learning. There is an intuitive aspect to learning, which is feminine. So what Bariya represents is that receiving of thought and receiving of emotion. That is not us actively thinking. They've given you this misconception that causes you to make this issue. When thoughts just come to us, we don't call this thoughts. We call this a concept. Oh, okay. Concept. Yes, concept. It's an abstract mental field that we can sort of experience, but it's not something that we are doing. Thinking, we are doing it. We are actively projecting little thought missiles. And the thought missiles are like little parts of a concept, but it's like looking at each little straight line on the curvature of a circle. It's each little action straight line, but on the whole, it's a circle. When we're looking at Bariya, we're looking at the whole, we're looking at the circle. So it's got to do with the mental field, but it's got to do with the receptive aspect of the mental field, where Yetzirah has got to do with the active expressions of the mental field where it touches the embodiment. So passion is related to Yetzirah, the passing of ions. You can passionately express, right? You can think a logical idea. You can plan, right? These are all Yetzirah related elements. So you see the difference. Passion is of Yetzirah, but they say that passion and emotions are the same thing. No, it's not. Feeling is that point of where the where the emotion finds its most expression. But it's still an impression. Feeling is still an impression. But it's where the most amount of expression is found of emotion, where emotion is more abstract. Emotion is far more abstract. And that abstraction of the emotion is what brings to us. So the feeling of number 6 is what carries the emotion, right? And the emotion lives in, you've got the emotion, the one star, and you've got the feeling, the other star, right? And the emotion and the feeling make a polarity. This is within the sphere of Venus. So to understand the differences, the nuances between Bariya, the sphere of creation, creative potential, which does encapsulate emotion. And by the way, we're speaking about intuition. We're speaking about intuition, the ability to intuit information when we're speaking about Bariya. When we're speaking about Yetzirah, we're speaking about the logical application and the passionate expression. So there are subtle differences between the elements of Yetzirah and Bariya that you will not find in books, because they will occult it and give you some broken down, simplified version of it that actually misleads one. And so now one will go around thinking that emotion is the sphere of Yetzirah. No, emotion is as close to the divine as we can get. It's as close to the emotion as the divine as we can get, because the emotions are such an abstract current of information that's the divine feminine speaking to us. And that divine feminine speaking to us is really the embodiment of the creative force, the creative potential, which is Bariya. And Yetzirah, once again, a masculine expression, is the passion. Passion is we get the emotions, they flow through us, we feel the emotions, and because we have felt the emotions, we have a passionate reaction to the emotions, and that's our active expression and active reaction to a feminine potential, which is masculine passion. See? So the passion belongs in Yetzirah. And so the third world represents this. And so you see how they have occulted and they have superimposed Yetzirah upon Bariya and Bariya upon Yetzirah, inverted it. And this inversion produces ignorance, because then we cannot understand the differences. Dinner making. Nice one, Howard. I hope you're making good dinner, man. Hope you're having good food, brother. So these three worlds then find themselves resolved into the fourth potential, which carries all three. And all three potentials are carried into the fourth potential. And so this becomes the receptacle of these three potentials. So the Enneagram is thus expressing itself across the divide to create a new octave potential. I use the word octave in terms of a new cycle of 9. And the new cycle of 9 begins with 10. So 10 is really 1. What happened was you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 went into a dressing room, became 1, but put on a different coat. Came out, now 1 is acting like 10. But 10 and 1 are not the two, they're not separate spheres. It's the same sphere. It's just a different octave revelation. 1 has gone into a dressing room, put on a coat, come out, now 1 acts as 10. But it's still 1. You can still see it's 1 underneath that 10. So, who, what, when, why? Bhairava. 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 Bam Shiva Shankar Bhagwan Namaha. Bhairava is the dog. Where's my Bhairava? My Bhairava's sleeping over there. Where's my other Bhairava? Bhairava is an emanation of Shiva. It's a very active emanation of Shiva. It's a very fearless, fearful, inspiring emanation of Shiva that is very close to the heart of Mahakali, right? And so the Bhairava, you'll find the most Bhairava mandir, the temples up in, if you go above Nainatal, you got to go to Uttarkashi. You go to Uttarkashi, you go above Nainatal, right up there. There's a place of 1,009 shivlings. What's the place called? 1,009 shivlings. Anyway, it's up there, Uttarkashi, Uttaranchal. And that place, you will see the Bhairava temples everywhere and big, beautiful statues of the Bhairava. Essentially, it's the archetype of a dog. And it's got a connection with the moon, number 2, right? The potential and power of Mahakali as it's becoming embodied and expressed by the Shiva as this guru principle. So it's power. Yeah, the number 8 is the key. I am dog. We're all dog like. I love dogs. Dogs are the best, man. Well, I love all animals, but I don't worry, just little Gothams. The birdies are the best too. Kitties and snakes. I love snakes. Actually, I've got a lot of loves. Elephants. Oh my God. I wouldn't mind having an elephant in my backyard. But yeah, so the way that this information has been occulted is unfortunate, misleading, damaging to one's spiritual potential to move power. And it's disturbing to one's energy field to have these misconceptions imprinted into one's psyche, because it causes ignorance. It causes one to lose one's perspective, lose one's way. So here is just another expression of how these occulted things have been mismanaged. When we speak about the Enneagram, that nonsense, that Ikazo, just go and look at that Ikazo nonsense that they vomited as an Enneagram. It's that stuff that's called an Enneagram. It's not even an Enneagram. I've mentioned why in previous videos. You can go and see there's an Enneagram conspiracy in my videos, not in my live, in my videos. All of this is in my lives. I generally prefer live because it's more organic. I just want to have an organic conversation with people. This is how I would teach the workshop. If I had a group of people here in front of me, I would stand up and this is how I would teach. Video makes it feel weird, like you want to edit this video and change, like this doesn't seem as authentic to me. I think videos are made to diminish authenticity, in my opinion, because it's all about the finished package as opposed to the raw experience. And so people can lie. They can present themselves as having knowledge that they don't have in a video, but in a live, they can't get away with that, right? It's the difference between live and video. Like there's people like Magic Lacrosse. He's always doing live because the dude's got some real knowledge, right? The dude's got some, and you'll find that people that do videos are like, they get loads of views and they get like, lots of big followings and stuff, but they're just sitting there reading from a book, putting it down, recording a piece, reading from a book, recording a piece, reading, and trying to sell themselves as having knowledge that they don't actually have. In the live, you can't do that. In the live, it's real. People can see, like, is this knowledge that you actually have, or is this something that you're just presenting that you think you have? So yeah, you'll find I did do a video on that, which I cut pieces of lives together just for convenience sake, and then added a little bit to it to give context. But otherwise, it's most of the information in that video is actually from live podcasts. So yeah, the Enneagram as presented by Ikazo, which is that completely weird thing, go and find out about that. I explain why on many levels. It's a total sham. It's a total occulted PSYOP. I also think it's important for us to recognize, the Saturn sigil. It's been demonized. Why is Saturn being so heavily demonized by all the kids with access to YouTube channels and TikTok and Instagram, and they're all vomiting the same PSYOP nonsense about, Saturn, and there's a Saturn in the control matrix. What is it? The moon Saturn matrix, the Saturn moon matrix, and all this rubbish, which is true. Don't get me wrong. It's true, but the way that it's presented presents an occulted version of the truth that becomes a lie, right? What is this moon Saturn matrix? Is it an evil thing that's used by the Illuminati? No, they are just using the laws of nature to manipulate us. They are using magic, and this is how magic works. You want to understand what magic is? Understand the Moon-Saturn matrix. Why is the Moon-Saturn matrix important? Right? Why? Right. Take a look. Take a look and see. We got the sphere of 8. We got the sphere of 2. 2 is that potential of the will being carried to manifest in time. So 2 and 8. 2 is after the beginning and 8 is before the end. So it represents the body of the movement. 9 is the ending. 1 is the will point of beginning. So when we look here, what do we see? We see the 2 and we see the 8. What do we see between the 2 and the 8? We see the blue triangle. Let me show you. Let me show you a better image so that you can understand what I'm talking about. This is going to give you guys some kind of a potent insight into why all these people are vomiting total nonsense about the Moon-Saturn matrix, because they've read it in a book by people who wrote about it. They've read it in a book written by other people who read it in a book written by people. Nobody knows what they're talking about because they're all vomiting the same absolute gobtrottle because they don't know any better. People aren't practicing anymore. So Enneagram, I break it down in a way that's really simple and easy to understand. Yeah. So here we can see quite clearly, this is that same Enneagram that I was showing you, the same one that's up here on the top right side in the logo, but this is the masculine and feminine expressions, the yang and the yin, right? Now notice the 3 mother letters, which are the 3 fundamental aspects. The 5 plus the 8 is the 13, plus the 2 is the 5 is 6, the triangle of harmony, right? 1 plus 4 plus 7 is 12. That's the Mazloth expression, right? Which is 3. This is the triangle of form, fire. Then we've got the 3, the 6 plus 9, which is 18, which is the triangle of completion, which is prana, which is air. So the triangle of completion, which is prana, which is air, completes the polarity between the triangle of form, which is the red one, and the triangle of the blue triangle, which is represented by the hanged man, which is the triangle of law. So the triangle of law and harmony needs to be impregnated by the principle of form. And so these two become a synergetic expression, and they are bound in harmony by the triangle of air, which is the triangle of completion, right? So, and we can see this. Where can we see this? Where do we see this very clearly? We see this once again. This is why I want you to understand. If it's the truth, it's the truth, and you can see it. It's simple. It's here in the Saturns Square. Look at it. Saturns Square. There it is for you to appreciate it, right? So the triangle of 7, 8, and 9, right, is how it's expressed through the actualizing. When we're looking at the more subtle aspects of how this emanation comes to be, we need to recognize what's going on here, right? So we've got the 9, the 6, and the 3, right? We've got the 5, the 8, and the 2, right? 9, 6, 3, and 5, 8. Sorry, no. We've got the 1, the 4, and the 7. 1, 4, 7, and the 2, 5, 8. I want you to look at those numbers, just how they work. This is the 666 trilogy, right? Now, the 1, 4, 7 is carrying the power of fire, and the 2, 5, 8 is carrying the power of water as an expression. Now we can see here the 1, the 4, and the 7. Just take a look very carefully at what you see here when you look at these numerations. The 1, right? The 4 and the 7. It makes an interesting expression if you look at it very carefully, right? The 1
the 7, and the 4. Because the 1 and the 7 are two powers that balance 4. Can you see that? The 9 and the 3 are two powers that balance 6. I hope you can see this, right? So when you understand that the 4 balances the 1 and 7, the 6 balances the 9 and the 3, we can see that the 8, right? The 8 is represented as an opposing force of 2. And when we see that this polarity of 8 and 2 is being expressed here, we can see it quite clearly here, right? Take a look, right? Look at the 8 and look at the 2. These two opposing forces are resolved in 5. Because 8 is the dynamic time which is expressing the potentials of 2, but 5 is what binds them in that movement that can give 2, which is the seed that is bound in potential, its full expression into 8. And you'll notice that there happens to be 2 times 2 times 2 that produces 8, right? Or 8 divided by 2 produces 2. So there's this fundamental relationship that the element of water has, and it's all around Mercury. We call Mercury the sign that relates to travel against water, travel over water. Mercury was always blessed for this. So Mercury has a lot to do with maritime. Maritime and Mercury are connected in an astrological chart for these reasons. And 8 is the expression of the financial systems of trade. And money, is 2 times 2 times 2 becomes the trade pieces of Saturn of time. And 5 is what becomes the medium through which the money can be traded as 8 because of the essence of 2 being bound in it. So you see this triangle has got this really interesting expression here. So the 8, the 5, and the 2, we can see is very extremely relevant. And when we look at it here, we see the 2 here, and we see the 8 here, right? Opposing the 2, and we see the 5 keeping them in check, in balance. So you can see we now have a negative space. So I can create a second Saturn sigil for you guys if you want, using these principles. But that is the esoteric sigil. And that sigil relates to within us. This sigil relates to outside us. So I'm showing you the negative form of the sigil of Saturn here in these principles, if you can follow it. And so this is once again important when we go back to the original question that I was posing to you, that I was answering for you. Gosh, I mustn't lose my way here because I'm going so deep into these occulted notions that that I threaten to lose my way. Right. So where were we? This triangle of 2, 5, and 8. 2, 5, and 8 represents the 2 and the 8, what we were talking about before, right? And the 2 is the embodiment of the seed of the will as pure potential, becoming the staggered expressions in time of the will expression of potential. And this is only completed when we consider it as 9. That's when it's been signed off on. But by 8, it's already being done. 9 is after it's complete. Very important. It's that final finishing. Okay. 8 is the principle of completing it. And 9 is when it gets complete. Because 9 represents that complete element of 8, which is an expression of 2. And this is really fundamentally important to understand. Because conceiving of this notion will give us an insight. Now, the 1, the 4, and the 7 are also interesting. The 1 and the 4, right, obviously share a relationship, right, a fundamental relationship. This is judgment. 1 is the sun, 4 is Uranus. Sun and Uranus have this special relationship, right? 2 is the moon, and 8 is Saturn. The moon Saturn matrix. It's got to do with the waters, memory, programming the memory. This is why the magicians use the moon Saturn matrix, because they wish to reprogram our memory, right? And the reprogramming of our memory changes who we become. So this has got a lot to do with how the PSYOPs is engineered. It doesn't mean that the moon Saturn matrix is some evil nonsense like all the silly podcasters would have you believe, all the YouTubers and the TikTokers and all those short people out there that just spew nonsense from books that they've read, that they think they understand because they understood the words in the books, but they don't actually understand what it means on a fundamental level as it relates to the psyche itself. So here we're getting deep dive, esoteric and occult insights into these principles. And the 1 and the 4 and the 7 is also a really interesting one to look at, right? Because when we look at the 4 represents the crystallization element, right? And the 1 and the 7 are being balanced by the 4. So you can see the 1, the 4, and the 7 are balanced, and we see the 6 and the 3 and the 9. So we can see how the 1, the 4, and the 7, and the 3, the 6, and the 9, if we take it to this point, right, express, right? So the element of fire is expressing through the element of air what becomes the element of water. That's why they say the fire above, the air in the middle, and the water beneath. In Taoist alchemy, they have these practices where you meditate on the hissing sound of the hiss. If you're ever cold, you want to warm your body, hiss and visualize fire and see the triangle of fire and see the fire and hiss, and you'll find your body warm up. If you're ever hot, you want to cool down, right? Meditate on there's a visual component of the water in the lower triangle of the pelvis, right? The triangle of fire is your solar plexus. It's where your rib cage has got a triangle inside it. The triangle of water is your pelvis, which is like a cup, right? It's got a triangular element to it. And the is the combination of these two. Is a combination of these two. The release of the breath. You find the heart resonating. The heart is resonating between all of these frequencies, carrying both the fire and the water. So air holds this mystical. This is why the Taoists consider metal and wood, because part of the fire is in water, and part of the air is in water, and part of the air is in fire. And so they recognize the air as having two distinct personalities. That's why you have fire and wood, right? Think about it. Wood burns in fire, right? Metal is fireproof mostly, right? And water gets carried by wood and makes wood grow. Water mostly often corrodes metals. You see this relationship here? It's got to do with something deep and profound that the Taoists wanted to keep in their knowledge. So to understand these three elements is to understand the fundamental. Now, getting back to the story that we were talking about, just as a fundamental, the relationship between 8 and 2, right? That relationship between 8 and 2. That relationship is the hanged man. The Hanged Man in the major arcana is the element of water. The Hanged Man represents the Saturn Moon matrix. They want us. Let me bring you the Hanged Man. Hanged Man. Just let me find a nice image of it so I can bring it to you. Get a little bit of it moving through you because I want to share it with you. That's how I'm gonna bring it to you. Yeah. So we remove that from the screen and we start a presentation. Share the screen. There we go. Volume off. And there we go. Share. So as you can see, let's just check that it's come onto the screen. Yes, it has. Here we have the idea. Notice the T of Saturn. First point. Very important. The T of Saturn. Right? Notice the fire, which is hidden. You notice the fire? Why is that leg crossing? What was the crossing of that leg? Fire element is being cut off. The flow of fire is cut off. What do we see here? We see the water element. What do we see? The water, we see it's being captured by the arms. So we see the waters flowing out of the fire, right? So the Hanged Man represents the water that comes from fire. This is an interesting concept. The only reason water comes from fire is because fire causes water to come out. When you put a log on the fire, the water comes out of the log in the form of steam and dripping and what have you into the fire. You'll see this if you burn wood. So that sacred reflection of this watery element here is what we are looking at when we see this specifically. And so that gives us an insight into the exact specific nature of this fundamental principle being expressed here, which is the element of water. And you see the water is an expression of fire, but it's opposing the fire, but it's got to do with the evolution of what the fire becomes. And that's as a result of it being bound by air, for air dips into both fire and water. So understanding these baseline concepts will give us an insight into why the Saturn Moon matrix is so important to understand occult reality. But all that PSYOP nonsense you've heard about, people writing about the Moon Saturn matrix and it's this and it's that, they just don't understand, because they're not practitioners, that in order to work with occult forces, you have got to understand the relationship between Saturn and the moon, because it's the essence of the water element. And the water element has got to do with that which produces form, or form is produced within water. Water becomes that distributor of form. Rocks form inside water, right? Water produces crystallization. The crystallization of number 4 happens as a result of the element of water, right? So there we can see that relationship, which is the emperor, which is 8 and 4, right? The emperor, which is that producing an empire, if you will, of structure. The dynamic expression of 4 through 8 is because of this element of water. And the interesting thing is 4, I want you to recognize something here. This is occulted. The word 4 is the word fear in old languages. This is going like Dutch, Germanic, going into like old Proto-German and such. We've got the word fear. Fear is the word for fire, right? So 4 and fire have got a very close association. But 4 is also related to earth, right? But the water that comes out of the fire becomes the earth as a result of the air. So 4 contains all 4 elements, but it's the root of fire. And fire is where everything comes from. So to understand this, it's understanding the electrical potentials. and that everything is an electrical expression. This is us. I got to go. We're almost 2 hours. Sending you all much love, big blessings. Om Namah Shivaya. Got to go or I won't be able to share this. Hope you enjoyed it. Big love.